This is Histories and Mysteries. I'm your host, Ashley, and your other host is
Jessica. And on today's episode, Ashley is going to be talking about the mobster king Al Capone. And I'm going to be talking about Bugsy Siegel. He's another mob guy. So it's our mob episode.
Yay, my bosses! So this one is pretty interesting. Al Capone was quite a notorious guy. I got my information from Wikipedia, Britannica.com mostly, and History.com.
Nice.
All right, so I'm going to jump right in. The notorious Al Capone, aka Scarface, was a crime boss in Chicago known for co-founding the Chicago Outfit. Al Capone started his life of crime at an early age. He was the son of two Italian immigrants, and he joined the 5 Points Gang as a teenager in New York. So he was born and raised in New York, Brooklyn specifically.
When was this?
Huh?
When was he born?
I don't know, Jessica.
You should have looked that up.
I guess I just didn't put it in my story. I want to say 1889. 1899. Brooklyn, New York, 1899. So he dropped out of school at the age of 14 after he struck his teacher. So I guess the school gave him a beating for that because they did that back then, and then he decided not to go back. The gang that he was in, that 5 Points Gang, mostly consisted of Italian immigrants who ran in Lower Manhattan, Harlem, and Brooklyn. Their activities, I put air quotes around that, activities, included racketeering, election fraud, extortion, street fighting, drug trafficking, pimping, illegal gambling, robbery, fraud, murder, knife fights, shootouts, and assaults, just to name a few. Yeah. So this is what he was in at like 14, 15 years of age, right?
Mm-hmm.
This gang was the most prevalent during the first 2 decades of the 20th century. At one point, Capone got in a fight with Frank Galluccio. It's Italian, I don't know. After Capone made a crude comment about his sister. Frank slashed Capone across the face, across his left cheek with a knife, and that's how Al Capone got the nickname Scarface, and that's how the movie got its name, Scarface.
Interesting.
Yeah. He also shot and murdered a neighbor during a craps game and then robbed him of his winnings, Capone did.
Nice.
So he was not arrested for that murder because no one had witnessed it. And, back then, like, detective work wasn't as advanced as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
So, at the age of 14 or 15, he had already committed his first murder.
Did you see a picture of that scar on his face?
I've seen pictures of Capone, but I've never really, looked for the scar.
It's huge.
Is it?
It literally goes from his ear to his mouth.
Dang.
Yeah.
When I picture knife fights, I picture, the greasers versus the, preps,
Yeah.
fighting like that.
Outsiders.
Yeah. That's what I picture.
Such a good movie.
I love that movie.
Oh, such a good movie. Stay golden, Pony Boy.
So in 1919, Capone moved to Chicago after angering an opposing gang by beating a member and leaving him for dead. So the gang was after him, and they were like, the leader of Capone's gang, that 5 Points Gang, said, well, hey, you know what? You got a hit on you. Why don't you move to Chicago with your wife? Because at this point he had gotten married, and he did have a young son. So this is a weird part because I saw one source that said the leader of this gang told him to move to Chicago to work under the leader of a new gang called Johnny Torrio, but I read another source that said that Capone actually moved to Baltimore first and tried to be like a straight, narrow, legit citizen and worked as a bookkeeper, and then moved to Chicago because he was going to make more money. So I'm not really sure which one it was. There's two different sources that say that, but eventually he gets to Chicago to work for Johnny Torrio.
It reminds me of like Clyde Barrow from Bonnie and Clyde. He tried to go straight after he went to jail once, and didn't work out.
Never works for these people. I feel like once you murder someone, like there's just really no going back from that.
No, not at all, because I usually feel that hunger to do it again.
Yeah. So he did move to Chicago with his wife and his young son and worked for Johnny Torrio. He worked as Johnny's bodyguard, who was the head of a criminal syndicate that supplied alcohol during the Prohibition. They were called the Chicago Outfit. The Chicago Outfit.
Okay, I was gonna say I think it's the Chicago Outfit, but I didn't want to.
I definitely wanted to say the Chicago Outlanders. Now that we talked about, I don't know. Okay,
let's talk about Outlander now.
Yeah. Okay, so rumor has it that Johnny's previous boss, Jim Colosimo, was assassinated by Capone himself to make way for Johnny. This crime group was mostly protected under something called the Unione Siciliana. I know I butchered that, but it is a group of Sicilians and Italians, and they were so big and so powerful that they controlled the majority of the Italian-American vote, and therefore they held a large amount of political power. So a lot of the crimes that they were committing, they would get away with because of this group kind of swinging for them.
Perfect.
Yeah. In the 1920s, when Prohibition was fully in swing, Johnny's group started bootlegging alcohol, which became extremely lucrative for them. Just a little bit of information on Prohibition. Prohibition started to gain traction as many women and factories pushed for the amendment. So women felt that alcohol hurt families, so they wanted to get rid of it. And factories wanted their workers to have less injuries and work harder, which they do without alcohol. And so in 1917, the U.S. entered World War I. Woodrow Wilson put in place a temporary prohibition to save grain for food because they were going into the war. And I guess they're like, hey, this is pretty awesome, and they kept it. So they introduced the 18th Amendment, which prohibited, I cannot talk, which prohibited the use of alcohol. But 33 states had already enacted their own prohibition before this federal law even passed. So it was definitely something the country was kind of leaning towards.
Weird.
Yeah. It lasted from 1920 to 1933, but it wasn't at all successful. Yeah, a long time, 13 years. But with the outlaw of alcohol came, obviously, ways to get around this law. So speakeasies were created, bootlegging was started, and because bootlegging was mostly run by these crime groups, such as Al Capone's, it caused an increased flow in money for them, which caused an increase in violence. And all of this started to decrease the public opinion on Prohibition.
Did you ever watch the movie Lawless?
I don't think so.
It's like Shia LaBeouf. Who else? Tom Hardy, Jason Clarke.
I don't think so. Sounds good, though.
It was a good movie. It was about the Prohibition.
Oh, okay.
It's a very violent movie.
Yeah, I think they didn't realize how violent Prohibition was going to get. And then when they did, they were like, ooh, okay, let's backstep a bit.
It was a very, very violent movie.
Yeah.
But very good. I was watching it.
Yeah, I should watch it. Sounds good. But right in the height of Prohibition, so in 1924, Capone again murdered someone in retribution of an assault on one of Capone's colleagues. A Chicago prosecutor tried to bring Capone up on charges, but the eyewitnesses of the events lost their nerve to testify against Capone, and the case was dropped. I mean, back in the day, I would not want to testify against Capone.
No.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, no, that's like an immediate death sentence.
For sure. So, Torrio's gang, so the guy that Capone worked for, had beef with a rival gang known as the North Side Gang. The gang shot Torrio and almost killed him, so he decided that he was done with the crime life and handed over control to Al Capone. So this is when Capone took over the Chicago outfit. Capone continued the gang's gambling, bootlegging, and prostitution rings, and actually expanded his territory by gunning down any rivals. So,
Perfect.
yeah. In 1926, he went into hiding for 3 months because he accidentally gunned down McSwiggan, the prosecutor who had previously tried to take him up on charges for that murder back in 1924.
Nice.
Yeah, and so every site that I saw really said that it was an accident, but I don't really know if I believe that.
That seems a little too coincidental.
Yeah. But this shooting of the prosecutor angered the public. And before, this increasing violence is what's angering the public. And so Capone said, hey, you know what? Let's get all of the crime bosses in town together and we're going to talk about a peace treaty. And so an agreement was made to stop the violence. It lasted for 2 whole months.
Of course it did.
At this point, Capone's wealth was estimated to be around $100 million in 1927, which, adjusted for inflation, is about $1.4 billion today. So he's worth $1.4 billion.
That's insane.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So things were going really good for Capone. For the most part, people liked him. He was generally well liked by the public. I don't think they knew quite how violent he was. And in the public eye, he was donating to charities. He was helping communities, lifting communities up out of poverty. He was the one that called this peace treaty together. He was donating a lot. People generally saw him as a decent guy, kind of like a Robin Hood figure, That is until one of the most notorious nights of the Chicago crime scene. It was called the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, and it happened on February 14th, 1929. Ooh. Capone's longtime rival Irish gangster George Bugs Moran was also in the bootlegging game and ran his operation out of a garage at 2122 North Clark Street. On Valentine's Day, 7 members of Moran's operation were lined up against a wall in that garage and gunned down. It's estimated that 70 rounds of ammunition were fired on the 7 men. There were very few witnesses to this massacre, but police were able to conclude that the men dressed up as police officers entered the garage pretending to arrest the men before gunning them down in cold blood. Even though Capone was not there, he was in Miami at the time. It is widely accepted that Capone was behind it, but no evidence ever came to light, and it remains one of the largest unsolved crimes.
That's crazy.
Yeah. After this, public opinion of Capone soured, but there was a little gang resistance against him anymore because he was so big. He owned so much, and he would just gun down his rivals, so there wasn't much resistance against him. So regardless of if he orchestrated the massacre or not, he sure did benefit from it. He was also given the title of Public Enemy Number 1. So that massacre just kind of scared everybody, and they wouldn't stand up to him anymore.
Mm-hmm.
1 month after the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, Capone was arrested for failure to answer a federal subpoena and was sentenced to 6 months in jail. But before he could even get to jail, he was arrested again for carrying a concealed weapon and was sentenced to a year in jail. He served a total of 9 months before getting released due to good behavior.
Oh, goodness.
So what ultimately brought Capone down was tax evasion. They had been working, the FBI and the accountants in the FBI had been working for years on a tax evasion case against him. And they were finally able to kind of jump on it, and they had really great evidence. And so they arrested him for it. And he was confident that he'd get a short sentence and even pled guilty in return for a 2.5-year sentence. However, the judge threw this agreement out, which then caused Capone to retract his guilty plea, and it headed to court instead. As a mob boss does, Capone bribed and intimidated most members of the jury to get the verdict that he wanted. So it was lined up looking like he was going to get away. And at the last minute, the judge changed the jury out to a brand new jury.
Good.
Yeah. So he was convicted and sentenced to 11 years in prison. So for most people, that's not that big of a deal, 11 years in and out. Unfortunately for Capone, he had syphilis.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah,
and at this point, by the time he got out, it was so advanced. It was something called neurosyphilis, which is basically like a degeneration of your brain. Doctors said that in 1939, when he got out of jail, his health was extremely poor. And he, at the time, had a mental capacity of about a 12-year-old.
Oh.
Yeah, so he was incredibly infected by this. And this late-stage syphilis was incurable at the time, so there's nothing they could do. So he just lived out his life and died in 1948 at his home in Florida. He was 49 when he died of a late-stage syphilis. What a way for a crime boss to go down.
That's crazy.
Yeah. His business in Chicago, the Chicago outfit, lived on through his prodigies and is actually still active to this day.
What?
Yeah, I thought mobs were kind of gone, but I guess not. It's still active to this day, running around doing some criminal stuff.
Well, that's terrifying.
I know.
Well, good thing we're nowhere near New York.
Yeah. Well, and interesting, one of the reasons why I really wanted to do Al Capone was because
Or Chicago, I guess. Sorry.
Yeah. So he was in Chicago for most of his acts of violence, which is right by Michigan, my home state. I'm from Grand Rapids, so it's about like 2.5 hours away from Chicago. And so it's rumored that he had a safe house in Grand Rapids on one of our lakes. And then it's also rumored that he had a shootout with a bank in Grand Haven, Michigan, which is a small town right on Lake Michigan. So I kind of grew up hearing a few stories here and there of Al Capone. So when we decided we were doing our Mob Bosses episode, I was like, ooh, I want to do Al Capone.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm interested to hear about Bugsy Siegel, though, because I don't really know anything about him. I was talking to my dad, and I was like, yeah, and then Jessica's going to do Bugsy Siegel. And he was like, oh, yeah, Las Vegas. And I was like, well, I don't know anything about it, so.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I was surprised because he is a pretty, like, he was very important in the mob culture.
Mm-hmm.
But I had never heard of him. And I went through, like, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 different sources, and I hardly have any information on him.
That's crazy. Yeah, I've heard the name, but I don't really know anything about him other than his name. I didn't even know he was based out of Vegas, so.
Well, he wasn't originally.
Okay.
So, but that's basically where he ends up doing the most. So, but I used, for my sources, I used Britannica. I used the Mob Museum website.
Oh, I used them too. I forgot to write that down. Yeah.
Oh. I used biography.com, history.com, and all that's interesting.
Of course.
I can't go an episode without them. They're my favorite.
They're
Hire
awesome.
me. Hire me, please. So his name was Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. He was born in 1906 in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
So same as Capone.
Yeah, just about 7 years later.
Yeah. He was born to Jewish immigrant parents, and he was raised in the area of Williamsburg, which is the Lower East Side, and it became crime-ridden with Irish and Italian gangs.
Probably thanks to Capone.
Yes. Siegel, of course, partook in these crimes. Is partook a word?
Yeah. Partook.
Okay.
Partook. He partook in it. Yeah, it's a word, right? Yeah.
Doesn't it sound weird though?
Yeah, it does, but it's definitely a word.
So he was involved with these crimes, including burglary, as well as organizing protection for street peddlers, just to ensure their safety. In 1918, at the age of 12, he met and befriended Meyer Lansky, who also became a major crime member. They formed the Bugs Meyer Gang, a group of Jewish mobsters that ran a group of contract killers under the name of Murder Inc.
At 12? Or that's just when you met him?
I don't know. I tried looking at so many different sources, and it just kept saying at 12, and I'm like, okay. Okay, I don't know. But like literally no other sources confirmed whether they met and created this at 12 or if they just met at 12 and then later on they developed this. But
okay,
honestly, like when they were this young, they were little shits either way. So
yeah.
Siegel and Lansky also joined with a mobster named Arnold Rothstein, and they had a profitable business bootlegging alcohol along the East Coast during the Prohibition.
Yeah. Prohibition did not work.
No. During the 1920s, Charles Lucky Luciano, along with other Italian gangsters, became an organized national mob ring, and Siegel and Lansky joined them. I love that I just put air quotes around Lucky. Oh my goodness. Okay. Siegel was nicknamed Bugsy due to his many mood swings and his violent demeanor. So like crazy as a bedbug, essentially.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and he also became a very prominent feature in this newly established group of criminals. He reportedly hated the name Bugsy, and he once stated, "My friends call me Ben, strangers call me Mr. Siegel, and guys I don't like call me Bugsy, but not to my face."
Yeah, I don't think I'd like to have a nickname known as crazy as a bedbug.
Yeah, that's gross. But at least it's like they're smart enough not to say it to his face.
Yeah, for sure.
Siegel's goal was to kill off as many older gangsters as he could. So he was one of the hitmen hired to kill Sicilian mobster Joe the Boss Mazzaria in 1931. And he was the rival of Luciano.
Oh.
It was reported that Siegel and 3 other men my notes. I wrote, it was reported that Siegel and 3 other men shut up Mazzaria, and in brackets I put shot up LOL.
Well, I mean, both of them shut up, right?
Both of them work. So it was reported that they shot up Mazzaria after ate a large pasta meal. So that's usually what the story is.
After a large what?
A large plate of pasta.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like a large Italian meal.
Okay.
The story has been contested by a local historian, though. They stated that witnesses stated there were only 2 shooters, not 4, and that the autopsy revealed Mazzaria had an empty stomach.
Oh.
So
okay.
Yeah, but that just kind of goes to show, like, how shit spreads.
Yeah, for sure.
And how things are exaggerated.
Yeah.
Siegel was only later linked to the killing of Mazzaria after his reputation for violence grew as well. So Siegel was actually linked to a lot of violent crimes that he may or may not actually have participated in. And he was pinned as being the one who murdered the Black Dahlia.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But the FBI were closely monitoring him during that time, and his whereabouts during the day were well accounted for. So it was kind of ruled out that he was the killer.
So, like, basically anything bad that happened, they're like, yeah, it was Bugsy.
Yeah, basically. So everything was just exaggerated about him, and people were like, oh, yeah, it was him for sure, for sure.
Got it.
Essentially, so yeah, his reputation may or may not have been blown out of proportion.
Mhm.
It's really not accurate, I guess. So take with this what you will.
Got it.
He was also reportedly hired by Lucky Luciano to murder Luciano's rival, Salvatore Maranzano. Maranzano? I don't know. I hate these names. Oh my goodness gracious. So after Siegel reportedly killed this guy, Luciano became a very powerful mobster. And with Lansky's help, so Meyer Lansky, the guy that Siegel befriended when they were 12, he helped establish this mob ring, which basically divided the power among each gang so that there weren't any more turf wars.
Okay.
So making some peace.
Meanwhile, Al Capone was like, turf war? I am the turf war.
Let me just murder all of y'all. In 1929, he married Miss Esta Krakauer, and they had 2 daughters, Millicent, who died in 2017, and their other daughter was Barbara.
Oh, wait, you said 2017, so she,
Yeah.
like, lasted for a while. Okay.
Yeah. She was an old lady.
Okay. Well, good.
In 1931, this once poor Jewish boy had made enough money to purchase an apartment in the Waldorf Astoria, which I think is an
Ooh.
exclusive hotel in New York.
It's expensive, yeah.
Yeah, so that shit's expensive. So he purchased an apartment there. So yeah, he was living in this like really lavish apartment in New York. He finally had enough money to be able to do something like that. So that was great for him.
Yeah.
He showed off his newfound money by wearing the best suits and going to the most famous nightclubs. He even bragged about all the people that he'd killed, justifying it by saying that it was other gangster members.
Oh my goodness.
That he was killing. So it was like,
So
oh,
it's
they're
like no
bad
big
people.
deal, you know? It's other
Yeah.
gang members, no matter.
Exactly. They're bad people.
I can murder who I want.
Precisely. In 1937, he moved along with his wife and kids from New York to California. This move was like Al Capone's friend. It was the idea of his good pal Lansky, because Siegel had killed so many gangsters that he was now the target for murder, and he was being watched by the feds. So it was kind of in his best interest to move out of New York.
Gotcha. I was wondering why he was moving if he was pretty successful like that, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. There he set up gambling dens and offshore gambling ships. He also consolidated the existing prostitution, narcotics, and bookmaking operations. So basically a bookie. So he was like receiving and paying off debts, etc.
Gotcha.
I thought it originally said bookmarking, and I like texted my dad because he watched a documentary on Bugsy and stuff, and I'm like, what the heck is bookmarking? He's like, I'm pretty sure it's bookmaking. And then I texted my brother, I'm like, what is bookmarking? He's like, I have no idea. And I texted my husband, he was like, I think you're meaning like a bookie. Yep. Exactly what I mean. Oh my goodness. Well, I don't know anything about these mobster people.
Yeah, same.
Through his dealings, he was able to assist in distributing very important gambling information to and from the West Coast. He led a very extravagant lifestyle still, and he held many luxurious parties, which included Hollywood elite.
Ooh.
Yeah. He socialized with stars such as Cary Grant, Frank Sinatra, and Jean Harlow, who and she was the unofficial godmother of his daughter.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. In the late 1930s, he started dating an actress by the name of Virginia Hill. They were both known for being violent and for being very good looking.
Oh, what happened to his wife?
I think that she was still around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think she was just in the background.
Poor thing.
In 1938, Siegel joined some Hollywood elite aboard a schooner in search of buried treasure on Cocos Island. And they spent the days digging and setting off dynamite in search of treasure,
Oh
but
my
they were
gosh.
never able to find it.
Oh my gosh.
They were able to return when their boat was towed to Mexico for repairs. Oh, goodness gracious. Him and Virginia both moved to Vegas together in 1945, and Siegel brought his dream to fruition by building the Flamingo Hotel and Casino, which was funded by crime money, and they built it in the Nevada desert.
Oh, okay.
The Flamingo Hotel had already been under construction, but the initial investors ran really low on money, so Siegel found this to be the perfect opportunity to kind of swoop in and take over.
Yeah.
The Flamingo became Las Vegas's first major hotel and casino complex.
Wow.
So, this casino was originally budgeted for $1.5 million then. And, but Siegel kind of started stealing,
Oh my god.
and he was really bad at management. So, the cost ended up being more than $6 million.
Oh my god.
And it was budgeted at 1.5.
Oh my gosh.
And this was
Wow.
mob money.
Oh, so they weren't happy with him, probably.
No. But he had Virginia deposit the money in European banks, which he was stealing. And he also wrote bad checks in order to conceal the construction costs from the mob.
Why would you steal from the mob that you're in?
I know. It's like, oh, his eyes were too big for his stomach, I guess.
He was a hot mess.
Yeah, he was. He was just enthralled in it all, right?
Yeah.
A very prominent member of the Eastern Syndicate, Siegel's good pal Meyer Lansky, was super angry when he found out about this.
Yeah.
On top of this, there were a lot of winners at the beginning. So, like, when the casino opened, a lot of people were winning instead of losing. So, that means that even more money was lost for the mob.
Yeah.
But Siegel's luck finally turned around, and he was able to start bringing in money for the casino. So, at least
good, because he was probably on a short list to get taken out.
Yeah. In 1946, Siegel and his wife Esta divorced, and she moved her and their 2 daughters back to New York. So, a few years after him and Virginia started dating, him and his wife finally got a divorce.
Gotcha.
On June 20th, 1947, so a year later, Siegel was killed in a hail of bullets when he was visiting Virginia at her home in Beverly Hills.
Oh, jeez.
Most of the bullets hit him in the face.
Oh, God.
And they even dislodged his eyeball out of its socket from across the room.
Wow.
And he was 41 years old when he died.
So not even like in Vegas where he was doing all of his crime, or in New York where everybody wanted him dead. It was in Beverly Hills.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. At almost the exact same moment of his death, back in Vegas, Lansky and his men took over the Flamingo Hotel.
That seems like a bit too coincidental.
Yeah. So they literally barged into the hotel or casino, and they're like, this is ours. We're running this now. And basically, like, at that moment, Siegel had been shot and killed.
Gotcha. So are they thought to be the ones that ordered his execution?
They're thought to be, but it was never confirmed.
Oh.
They don't know who killed Siegel. So, because Lansky denied having any involvement, but like we're kind of discussing, it seemed really coincidental that he would take over the hotel after
At
he was
that exact
murdered.
moment, yeah.
Yeah. But there's no doubt that he was killed on mob orders due to his money schemes.
Gotcha.
Another theory was that Virginia Hill's brother targeted Siegel because of domestic related issues between Siegel and Hill.
Hmm.
But regardless of what actually happened, Siegel's death remains a mystery to this day. And the Flamingo Hotel was what helped the mob become more established in Vegas, and it still stands today.
Hmm.
So, even though Siegel was a slime ball, he did help the mob become established, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then they
Uh,
killed him.
yeah, exactly. I mean, don't steal from your friggin' mob, you
Right?
dumbass.
Oh my gosh. Like, you know what they do. You know how they operate.
Yeah, exactly. Since the Flamingo became successful finally, more people decided that they were going to establish new casinos along the Vegas Strip. So there was the Thunderbird in 1948, the Desert Inn in 1950, the Sands and the Sahara in 1952, and the Riviera, the Royal Nevada, and the Dunes in 1955.
Hmm.
Another interesting point to note is that Siegel was never convicted of a serious crime. He was only convicted of gambling and vagrancy and placing bets illegally on a horse race. So basically, he only had to pay a fine, and all other cases against him had been dropped. And he never had to do any serious time.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
I'm looking at the Flamingo Hotel right now.
uh,
It looks really nice. But it looks like now it's owned by Caesars.
okay.
And I wonder if there's any mob connections still.
I don't know. I wouldn't doubt it, honestly.
Yeah.
Uh, this was just like a fun fact that I decided to throw in at the end because why not?
Why not?
Siegel had also tried to sell explosives to Mussolini in 1939 with
What?
yeah, and he tried doing it with a Hollywood socialite named Countess Dorothy DeFrazio.
Oh.
However, this plan fell through when the explosives failed to impress, and as they were leaving, so stupid. As they were leaving, they supposedly ran into Hitler's second in command, and Siegel, who was Jewish,
Oh gosh.
stated he wished he had killed the man then and there.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
Yeah, but that was that.
Interesting.
And that is all I found on Bugsy Siegel. And I looked through so many different articles, but
Interesting. I think like mob life and gangster back then is so interesting, and I wonder like what made it die out. Like, I mean, obviously they're still around, but they're not nearly as powerful as they were. And
yeah,
so was it really prohibition that just like was their main, money winner, that how other than obviously yours when you had the casinos, but like prohibition really projected them into, wealth and status, and then after that ended, it seems like they kind of died out.
yeah. I have no idea. And honestly, like it might still be prominent, right? But we just don't really,
It's more behind the scenes, maybe.
yeah, we don't really live that lifestyle. So
I don't know about you, Jessica, but I'm pretty hardcore.
I am not. I am definitely not.
I'm definitely not either.
No. But anyways, that was a fun little episode. I know it's short today,
Yeah.
so sorry everybody, but
Yeah, just a little short episode for you on the mob bosses. Next week, we will be talking about the Westboro Baptist Church, so get ready to be extremely mad. And Jessica will be talking about John Wayne Gacy, so it'll be a bit longer of an episode, but we hope you enjoyed this little one we did for you. And you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Histories and Mysteries, or you can email us at historiesandmysteries515@gmail.com.
and if you want to, you can also rate us or write us a little review because that helps us go a long way.
Oh, we would love that.
We appreciate all the ones that have been left so far, but we do need a little bit more just to kind of get a little bit more traction.
Yeah. So if you loved us, Leave us a review. If you don't like us, email us.
Exactly. I mean, feel free to leave a review, but be nice about it. I'm literally about to give birth to a baby, so my emotions are a little high. So be nice to us, please.
Oh, goodness. Yes. Well, we hope you guys have a great week, and we will talk to you next week.
Bye.